Welcome to the ADAverse, the Australian business community podcast for all things automation, data and AI.
Hello and welcome to ADAverse, the podcast where we dive into the world of automation, digital transformation, and with a little dash of AI magic. I'm your host, Shaun Leisegang, and today we've got a really exciting episode for you. Today we're going to be exploring AI agents, what they are, how they work, why everyone's buzzing about them, and I've got the perfect guest to break it all down. Joining me is Tony Nudd from UiPath. Tony is the Principal Agentic Automation Engineer for APJ or Asia Pacific at UiPath. And basically, he's leading the charge on these futuristic AI agents in the Asia Pacific region. He's been with UiPath through its incredible journey from being an RPA pioneer to now pushing the boundaries of AI-powered automation. So Tony, welcome to the ADAverse podcast.
Hi, thanks, Shaun. Pleasure to be here.
And for those tuning in, whether you're brand new to automation or a seasoned pro, definitely stick around. We're going to make AI agents understandable and fun, and we're going to cover off what they are, how they fit in with robots and humans. We're going to cover some real-world examples and even put Tony in our rapid-fire hot seat round for some fun at the end of the show. So lots to cover, so let's get started. Tony, before we jump into AI agents, let's talk about you and UiPath. You've actually got one of the coolest job titles I've ever heard of, Principal Agentic Automation Engineer. And I know at one point you were also called an RPA Imaginator at UiPath, which is just awesome. So can you share with us a bit about your background, what your journey's been like at UiPath, and how you ended up working with AI agents?
Well, yes, certainly 40 years ago, I didn't think I'd be playing with AI technology. So I went to college and I did some microelectronics and got my soldering iron out, and we were building computers before they became sort of disposable and switchable. I then did a stint at university with theology, which was very different from IT, but all my friends went to uni. I thought, hey, I want some of that as well. I was interested in ancient history and languages, and that was a really good generalistic subject to take that encompassed all of that. Of course, I had to get a job afterwards, and so I dropped back into the electronics and slowly moved into software and workflow. I joined a company called Staffware in the UK back in 2000, I think it would be. They were a pioneer of low-code, drag-drop configure workflow, and slowly made my way all the way to UiPath in 2018. And haven't really looked back. And, being with UiPath, it's been a crazy ride. When I started, we had 3 products, a robot, an orchestrator, and a studio. And now we've got something like 35 modules all working together. And we've also incorporated this thing called Agentic, which we're going to discuss today. And so it's been a really, really exciting journey, kept my mind busy. And yes, I like playing with things, taking them apart, and maybe try to do things that they weren't meant to do in the first place. But that's part of playing.
And I guess an incredible journey, and that whole journey to where you got to today in kind of path. But just looking at the path journey specifically, it kind of mirrors your own journey. So from straightforward RPA to more intelligent automation, and now into what we call the agentic era. So for listeners, UiPath started out helping companies, as Tony mentioned, automating repetitive tasks on computers. Think of things like copying data from spreadsheets into a form. A robot can really do all of that all day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. No complaints, never gets sick, and never takes coffee breaks. But as Tony mentioned there, over time, the UiPath platform has added some more AI capabilities. So things like the ability to be able to read an invoice or even understand an email. And that's kind of evolved to where we are now, which is what we're going to talk about, which is AI agents, which is a whole new ballgame for us. So, Tony, let's get started, right? So let's go into the wonderful world of AI agents and kind of the journey from RPA robots. Did you agree with my analogy there of being able to click around and do different things from an RPA perspective? And then tell us how that's evolved into this AI agent world.
Yeah, absolutely, Shaun. And I think one of the words that we use for RPA workflows is deterministic. It's very logical. It's black and white. It's a yes, no, or a true, false type of answer. And it has its place, and it's very controllable. And if anything goes wrong, it goes straight to an exception queue. And that sort of helped us automate a lot of work over the last few years. And then we had, of course, 2, maybe 3 years ago now, this explosion of generative AI and the introduction of GPT and some of the other LLMs that I'm sure all of our listeners have played with at some point. And we slowly started bringing those into the fold. And we first of all brought out what we call generative AI activities. So the UiPath platform is made up of a bit like Lego bricks. These different Lego bricks are activities that do different things, and bringing in some Gen AI activities like remove PII information from a document. That's very difficult to do if you're going to do it with code or with standard RPA. But with Gen AI, we're able to apply these models that can really go through a document very quickly and identify PII information, personal identifiable information. So things like bank numbers, credit card numbers, dates of birth. To do it by code or to do it deterministically, very difficult. But with Gen AI, you simply send it to the model. The model will do all the work for you. And within a few seconds, it's identified and scrubbed out the PII information. So it's saving a lot of coding time, but it's also bringing some intelligence into it as well. And the nice thing about it is where RPA sort of is not able to do a job, it goes to a human to finish, right? And by applying Gen AI in certain instances, we can alleviate those humans of even more boring, repetitive work or even compliance work, which maybe they might miss.
So kind of one of the analogies that I often use, if I needed to bake a chocolate cake, if I gave a robot a recipe, it would follow that recipe step by step. But if I was going to use an agent, right, all I would need to say is, hey, go bake me a chocolate cake. And it would figure out what the ingredients are and the steps that I needed to take and how it would go about and execute. Would you say that's a really good, simple analogy for people?
Yeah, I like that analogy, Shaun, and I'm going to expand on that just a little bit, because an AI on its own could give you the recipe, okay? But that's all it can do. It can't go and order the ingredients from your local shop online. And that's where having these robots with AI makes the AI actionable, what we call actionable. So not only do we get the recipe, but we can also order the ingredients as well. We can sort of action that recipe. And that's the magic piece of bringing AI and robots together.
Yeah, absolutely. Another nice analogy that I use is often say, well, AI is like having the most intelligent brain, and it's really good to have a brain, right? But if you look at your and our bodies, like having a brain without a body is not really going to help us very much. So really where automation is the body, right? So that allows us to go and do things with some of these great kind of things that we might pick up or actions that we might need to perform, and then we can go action that with our body. People always ask me then about data, and then I always talk about data being the fuel that powers AI. So as food fuels our body, data fuels all that AI. So really, really good to kind of get to the bottom of that. Now, Tony, just to talk about some of the tech under the hood, right? So we spoke pretty high level, but maybe for some of the listeners, we won't go too deep, but really what enables an AI agent to be able to do what it does?
So there's a number of components. First of all, we have the underlying LLM, large language model, that's sort of driving the decision making. And in the UiPath platform, you can choose whichever LLM you need. I think at the moment we're supporting 12 options. That will increase over time as we go through the year. So once we have our large language model, we then need to create some prompts. And so the capability of creating prompts to then invoke and make the LLM do something. And we call that goal setting. So, we might set a goal to say, summarize this document, or go and summarize this website, for a simple example. Now, once we've done that, it may be that we're asking it to do the chocolate cake recipe. Okay. And what an LLM will do will simply take all the information it's been trained with on the internet and give you a recipe. And the problem with that is it's not specific to you or your business or your organization. It's just general stuff that it's found across the internet worldwide. And so what we can do is we can sort of bring that and hone in the answers to what we call context, or context grounding. And for those of you who are familiar with RAG or RAG, it's a similar concept. And that's another tool where we can bring in specific documents. So it might be particular styles of chocolate, or it might be particular styles of chocolate cake in your geolocation. Or if it's an HR solution, it could be your HR policies. And now when we use a prompt to ask the LLM to reach a goal, maybe can I take next week off as holiday or as leave, rather than going to the internet to find the answer, it will draw its answers from that context data, that set of policies or those set of recipe documents, to really narrow and give a really good point answer. They're the basic elements. And then, of course, about the actionable side. How do we then action things? And that's when we can also bring into the mix the ability for that LLM agent to now choose tools to action what it's done. So, for example, can I have next Wednesday off as leave? The LLM says, yes, according to your company policies, you can. And then it will go a step further and say, would you like me to book that leave for you in your leave system? And that's the action bit. So all of those components are brought together within UiPath's platform to give you that one-stop shop of really easy configuration and control of your LLM or your AI agent.
Tony, what about that trust layer? So obviously these things can go and they can go do their things, but talk to us a little bit about the trust layer that underpins all of that.
Absolutely. So if you were going to use, for example, we'll stick with ChatGPT. It's brought to you by a company called OpenAI, and they have what they call APIs that allow you now to connect to their ChatGPT, which will be hosted on a server somewhere in the cloud, in the internet, somewhere around the world. And for general purpose, for home use, that might be fine. But of course, for companies, for healthcare, for government, for banks and insurance companies, they don't want their data or their clients' data just going to any sort of server and going off into the internet sort of anywhere. We need very tight control. We need security. We need compliance. And so what UiPath have done is they said, well, look, we will host those available LLMs within the UiPath cloud infrastructure with all the security that goes around that, so that when you do invoke one of our agents using the GPT option, for example, it's going to a hosted, contained version of ChatGPT, not going off to that third-party sort of unknown area. And everything else that you do within the creation of the AI agent or the running of the AI agent is also audited. So you have a very, very good audit controls around what the sort of decisions, the reasoning, who invoked it, and what tools it used to process its information. So again, very, very granular insights into everything those agents are doing.
So in summary, I guess it's just safe and secure. None of your business data is getting leaked out there. It's safe, secure. It's within this trust layer. We can audit it. We can see exactly what it did and anything that might have happened when it's going to perform its tasks. So I think that's a really good kind of level set for people, right? So again, just for the beginners, AI agents, think of them as these little robots, but robots that have superpowers and they can think and plan independently. And then maybe for more of the techie users, these AI agents are large language model driven, and they automation orchestrators that can dynamically sequence tasks across different systems. So now that we know what AI agents are, let's talk about how they fit into the bigger picture. So we've got these agents, we've got these traditional RPA bots, and we've got us as people. So it's like a new team in the workplace. We've got humans and digital workers working side by side. But how do they all work together? Is it chaotic? Is it a well-coordinated dance? Talk us a little bit about kind of how everything comes together.
Sure. So this can be a contentious discussion, Shaun, and so I'm going to keep it non-contentious. I'm glad you said about it being a helper to the humans, that sort of human augmentation. And very much today, our early adopters are doing exactly that. It's not about sort of replacing people. It's about enhancing their capabilities, augmenting them to give them superpowers to do their daily jobs that are sort of IT or data based. And so that human augmentation is really important. So how does it bring together? First of all, we do not dictate the user interface to talk to those AI agents, but of course we do have some that you can use. You could use the UiPath Autopilot for Everyone, which is a sort of little chat application that sits on your desktop. You could use UiPath Apps, which is a browser design area where you can create web pages to chat to your LLMs. But we also offer an open API, and you can connect any system, any UI to talk to your UiPath AI agents, including Slack. You could use Facebook Messenger. You could use your favorite chatbot front end. So it's unlimited in terms of the user interface. When the AI agent is running, it may need some more information. It may say, well, hang on a minute, I'm halfway through reaching the goal you've asked me to achieve, but I need some more information to continue. Or maybe I've hit an error. Maybe something's happened on the network that stopped the agent from running. So, of course, we now want to pass the work back to a human And that's also possible. And one of the ways is to use UiPath's Action Center, where the agent can now talk back to the human. And we have also the capability of supporting what we call long tail and short tail work. A short tail might be, hey, human, I need the ID code for this customer to continue. That will pop up in Action Center. I immediately put the information in, and the agent will continue and get a result. However, it could be that the agent goes, I'm processing this request. I need some information from the customer. I've automatically sent an email to request that information. And that will now become a long tail process because we now have to stop and pause and wait for our client to respond by email for the agent to pick up the work. And in order to do that, that could be a minute, an hour, a day, a week, a year. And so we can also support these long tail communications between humans. And in that example that I mentioned, it wasn't just the UiPath user. We can bring in users from third parties outside the UiPath universe. And it's the same is true for agents and robots as well. It's not just UiPath can support its own AI agents, but we can bring in other agents from Microsoft, Salesforce, ServiceNow, etc. And we need to have some sort of mechanism to support all of these humans in the process, all of these robots, all of these agents in the process. And we call this agentic orchestration. And that's, if you like, a sort of control layer right above everything that's happening. And you can see that, and another term that we can use is called the guardrails. And so you would describe your end-to-end process. So it might be something like a telco support process. And you describe the interactions that are expected or the pathways that an agent could take, that the human could take, that the robot could take. And so while the agent is able to do a lot of decisioning by itself, when it's finished, it will go up to this top layer and go, well, I finished my bit. What's next? Oh, I have to go to the human and pass my answer to the human. Okay, I'll do that. And then the human does their bit. And then when they finished, it goes up to this orchestration layer, which then says, okay, what's the next bit in this end-to-end enterprise process? And of course, that process could be very short. It could just be one step, or it could be many steps calling many sub-processes. So this orchestration layer is absolutely key to keeping all your processes, robots, and agents all coordinated together. And of course, with governance, control, oversight, and auditing.
What a great explanation. So I smile because every time you mention the word orchestration, I always think of a symphony. And the way that I often describe what you've just described there is I say, in a symphony, we've got different things. So we've got people. So the people are the supervisors and they're the experts in all the nuances. They provide direction, they handle exceptions, and they do the high-level creative and strategic thinking. And we're the ones who ultimately approve important decisions if needed. So think of us as humans as the conductors of the orchestra, or maybe even the team coaches if you wanted to use that analogy. And then kind of the AI agents, I kind of think about these as the planners and decision makers within the automation. So the agents are like the orchestrators, section leaders, and they understand the goal. So what piece of music do we need to play? They coordinate their team behind them. They decide which robots or instruments to bring in and in what order. And they even decide to loop in a human if something's unclear, in meaning going back to the conductor and saying, hey, do we need to repeat this verse? And then you've got the bots, and these are really the hands of the operation or the musicians playing the instruments exactly as written, following the rules. And they really what they excel at doing is the very specific tasks very quickly and accurately, logging into those applications, moving data around, clicking buttons, and really doing exactly as they're told with no complaints and no fatigue in it. So another nice analogy to use there. Now, Tony, not every process or task is a good fit for an AI agent, right? So some things might be overkill to use an agent. Some things might be too sensitive to fully hand off. How can a business or a team identify what to automate with an AI agent versus what should be a traditional software bot, or just leaving that task to a human? So really talk us through what makes a really good fit for an AI agent.
Sure. And again, this is a very hot topic, Shaun, because everyone is telling you that your businesses should be adopting multiple agents, chaining agents together. Agents are going to rule the world. We've been engaging with a number of early adopters of our platform across the globe, and we've got about 200 or so actually doing real world projects right now. And what's really come across is, first of all, as we've already said, it's about augmenting their human team rather than actually replacing the human team, which I think is really important. And also, as we mentioned earlier as well, we have these things called Gen AI activities. And it may be that actually you may have an existing RPA And by adding a Gen AI activity, which in itself could be an LLM connection, that is enough to supercharge the existing RPA or the existing robot process. So just adding some Gen AI to a process doesn't make it agentic. So your question was, well, what does make it agentic? It's about that decisioning and planning. It's about where you need the AI to take various inputs of data, make key decisions based on that data, invoke tools to either get more data, to process data, or to update systems with the answer, and do that in a certain sequence, which is controlled by or the decisions made by the agent itself. So really, it's a case of what is it the AI is to do. If it's just to do a very simple summarization of a document, it doesn't need to be agentic. However, if I need to take an email, read the email, understand what the client is requesting, start a number of processes based on the content of that email, coordinate those, bring back a report to say that they've been done with various other bits and pieces, that could be agentic because the agent is making some decisions, it's invoking tools, it's doing more than just one thing. But there is a fine line. And in the early starters that I've mentioned before, even internally as well, we were trying to force agentic into situations that just really weren't. And now we've learned some really good lessons, and we're actually seeing now what is a good fit. And it is still an art. There is no black and white rule. However, UiPath, through their academy program, will be producing some best practice guides on how to identify agents and how to build good quality agents.
Kind of the rule of thumb that I always use is to match the tool to the task complexity, right? So how I kind of think about it is I use these standard robots for highly repetitive rule-based tasks, ones that don't involve too much judgment. So if the process is the same every time and can be fully specified in something like a flow chart, really a regular robot can handle it end to end. And an example of that could be moving data from one form to a database every night. It's a pretty route task. RPA's got it, and a standard robot will obviously take control of that. On the other side of that, I kind of think about keeping humans for things that require pretty complex judgment or creativity, maybe even empathy, that automation can't handle. Well, at least not yet. Maybe there's some things coming down the line. But if a task really needs a personal touch of deep expertise, like negotiating a deal, devising a strategy, or having a sensitive conversation with a client, really you want a human in the driver's seat in that specific scenario. So that kind of leads us then to AI agents. And really, I see AI agents being used for processes that kind of fall in the middle ground. So things that are pretty complex but variable, involve unstructured data, but they still have some sorts of rules in terms of what the outcomes are. Great candidates are those where parts of the process were too hard to automate before, maybe because it just involved reading and interpreting text, making a decision based on multiple inputs, or dynamically figuring out a workflow. So that's kind of the flow chart that I use in my world in terms of when to choose which kind of strategy and how we might solve that problem. All right, Tony, now let's bring this to life with some real world stories, right? So I don't want you to break any NDAs, of course, but I know you're working with a lot of people in this wonderful world of AI agents. You've seen some of them out in the wild. Could you share maybe a customer success story or a pilot that you've had some exciting results with?
Yeah, sure. One of the classics, and this can be a sort of adapted to many different situations, but the example I'm going to give you is for a telco. So they have a support team of humans on the phone, and somebody rings in to say, "Hey, my Wi-Fi is going up and down every 15 minutes. Can you help me sort this out, please?" And if you've been on support calls before, you'll know that you're probably put on hold for quite a long time. And even when you speak to the human agent, there's a lot of delay. They're giving you some really silly questions and answers that don't make sense. And the reason they do that is because they're actually waiting for 3 or 4 screens to open up with all the data about you as the customer so they can give you a good service. And what we've done is we've created an AI agent that will create a 360 view of the customer in very, very short time, just a few seconds. And what is happening is the agent is going, okay, the IVR system has sent me the customer's phone number. It immediately looks up the account for that phone number and goes, this is Mr. or Mrs. Smith in Sydney, brings back the customer reference number for that caller. It will then go to maybe the CRM system, maybe Salesforce, to bring back a customer profile. It might go to ServiceNow at the same time and bring back some open tickets that are still being open for that client. It might go to the Netcool Tivoli system to see are there any current outages with the network equipment in that city or town. It might even generate, in fact, it does generate a small telescript to the human to talk to the customer, just in case they need some guidance. And it will also go to the library of online PDFs to suggest which ones are specific for that particular problem. It does that in around 8 seconds, bringing all this information together in a very short, sharp view, which is then passed back to the telco human agent. And now they have everything they need to offer that customer good service. It's reduced the number of screens that have to be opened. It's reduced the time waiting. And it means that the whole experience of the customer who's already in a bad mood because they don't have internet is just a lot more smoother and swifter. And hopefully the resolution will also be quicker.
Such a good example of kind of all of that coming together now. Now, often we talk about these agents from a customer service scenario. Do you have maybe another example that you can share with us that's outside the customer service world?
Absolutely. Another scenario would be where we have a large organization who might put out RFIs or RFPs for contractors to bid for work. And typically you might get, 30, 40 bids coming in, and these bids are very comprehensive. We're talking 30, 40 pages of responses, of financial information, and it needs to go through some sort of adjudication process or triage process in order to prioritize how each of these is looked at by the human team, if you like. And this was done manually. So you'd have a pre-team that would do the triage, and they would pass the assessments then on to the main people involved in choosing the contractor. So what we've done is we've created an agent now that will go through the RFP answers. It will compare them with the ideal answers that they're looking for. And those ideal answers are in what we call the context grounding, the RAG area. And so the agent is then able to provide an ordered list in priority of which bidders should be looked at and in what order. Importantly, compliance and risk is very key in the measurement. And the AI agent is able to highlight exactly where in the responses there may be a non-compliance answer or a non-compliance financial piece or a non-compliance legal piece. And again, by highlighting these very early on, the correct choice of bidder can be made a lot quicker.
Yeah, another really, really great example there. So thank you for sharing that. Now, Tony, I'm sure all the listeners are thinking, wow, this sounds great, but how do we start? Do I need a team of data scientists? Do I need a huge budget? Like, what's the entry point? So, Tony, what are some of the actionable steps or advice that you can give to people or individuals looking to adopt AI agents? And how can they get started in a very practical way?
Yeah. So I would see two distinct teams involved in building AI agents within this sort of agentic framework. So first of all, we do have our RPA designers, the bot designers, the traditional UiPath, if you like, automation designers. They will probably have a slight developer side to them. They don't need to be full-on developers, but they do need to understand how to write some code, while loops and things to get the best out of the RPA platform. And they will be creating what we call the tools, the RPA executionable, actionable pieces that the AI agent would need in order to do its job. And then you would have the basically prompt engineers. You don't need any more skills than the prompt pieces because the UiPath platform has sort of made accessibility very easy. You don't have to worry about what the context grounding is, what RAG is. You don't have to worry about what LangChain is or things like this. It's all been created in a really nice, easy to use interface for you. So you really can just concentrate on the prompt generation. Now, it could be that the RPA designer is also the prompt engineer, but they are different skill sets. I've been lucky enough to have a number of interns come through and working in my team. Some of them have been from marketing, some of them have been developers, some of them have been data scientists. And they've all found it really easy to pick up the AI agent builder and actually create some really interesting prompts. One young lady was analyzing the information coming from a wind turbine to see if it needed any proactive maintenance. A young man created a report from Airbnb to determine what the optimal price is for certain properties in certain areas. So again, a lot of different sort of ways of using AI agents, a lot of different ways of collecting the data and chopping up the data and creating reports, and their backgrounds have been quite different. You may think a data scientist is all about coding. It's not. Data science is more around what is data, how is data used, not necessarily the coding. So again, the skill sets are quite accessible. Again, UiPath Academy is producing a number of courses that you can access freely to get best practice. And there are a number of other free courses to help you with your prompt engineering. Udemy is one, and I know that a lot of the other vendors, like Google, Microsoft, etc., also have these online courses as well.
Thanks, Tony. It's lots of great resources for people to get started. Now, what else do you see out there? Like if people didn't want to do it themselves and they wanted to partner with someone with a trusted, safe pair of hands, what other things have you seen out there?
Mm-hmm. The one good thing about two really good things about UiPath is, first of all, we have more than 1 million community members. Those are people that know how to use the products, get their hands dirty and actually build things. They're active on our community website, forum.uipath.com. Every answer, even internally, we go to the forum to see what sometimes the answers to problems might be with the UiPath ecoverse. And then the second major contribution to UiPath's growth is, of course, our partner network. And you can go to our website and look at your local partners. And I believe Shaun Takala is also a prominent UiPath partner. And I say that in jest because I know you are, and you're one of our leading partners in the ANZ region. So if you do have any questions, do contact Shaun immediately.
I appreciate the plug, Tony. All good. Yes, we absolutely do a lot of UiPath implementations. Maybe how we handle it, we're working with a lot of our customers at the moment on AI agents, being able to figure out or educate them firstly on what they are and how they might be able to be used, then helping them generate kind of a list of ideas of where AI agents might be able to help them out. And then most importantly, being able to figure out which are the ones they should really kind of take through and kind of, we've got a very nice methodology that we've referred to as the AI agent methodology. If anyone would ever like to find out about that, certainly drop me a note and happy to help people out on their journey. All right, Tony, you've shared some awesome insight for the audience today, but now it's time for our hot seat. So it's a pretty fun tradition here on ADAverse podcast, and this is where I ask you some rapid fire questions. Some might be techie, some might just be for fun. You answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. So are you ready?
I think so, Shaun. Be gentle with me.
All right, Tony. First up, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Astronaut.
Mate, that's a good answer. I don't think I've ever had anyone say an astronaut. And that's more a reality nowadays with SpaceX and all the crazy things going on, right? It's not too late, mate. It's not too late for you. But what is something on your bucket list that you've managed to tick off?
Funnily enough, it was a jet fighter ride in Chuka. My wife was vehemently against it, and I promised her it was the very last dangerous thing I'd ever do in my life, and I've kept my word so far, unless that astronaut position does come up.
Sounds good. All right. What is something on your bucket list that you are yet to do?
Astronaut. Shaun, I want to go to space. It's still on the list. It's the only thing left on the list.
I could wave a magic wand and make your dreams come true. I'd send you to space tomorrow. So all good. All right, changing gears a bit. If you could recommend one book for the audience to read, what would it be and why?
So the one book that I recommend everyone should read is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Not necessarily because you want to talk about trolls and dwarves and wizards, etc., but it's more around fantasy. It's more around getting your mind to go to places that maybe it doesn't go to in day-to-day life. And it's all about trying to bring in that going beyond the confines of normality. And that's something that we need to bring sometimes to our designs. So when I'm tinkering about, I'll try and, as we said earlier, I'll try and make things do things that they shouldn't do or they weren't built to do, and to sort of push things to the boundaries. And I think being able to read, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Lord of the Rings, but you know the style of the book, it's more to just get your brain thinking creatively and outside the norm so that you can cross those barriers. And again, going back to the interns I had before, the nice thing about interns is they haven't had that molding of what it should be to work in an office or to work in an organization, and they don't have those boundaries. And some of the interesting work that they do with our technology just shows that. So just try and free yourself of boundaries and read things that expand your mind a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant advice. All right, last but not least, how do you want to be remembered?
the guy that always wanted to be an astronaut but didn't quite make it. I'd like to be remembered as somebody that gave it a go and tried to make it do something it wasn't meant to do. I think that's my legacy with pretty much anything. Give me a screwdriver and a hammer, and I'll try and make that chair become a car or whatever the scenario is. Always push the boundaries and don't be limited by what other people tell you, the limits should be.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure. So I know we've covered a lot today. We've covered everything from AI agents, what they are, how they're different from our trusty little software bots, to how agents, bots, and people form the ultimate dream team in automation. So we've learned how to spot some good opportunities for AI agents, those complex or messy processes that can finally be tamed, and heard some real success stories about how people are using AI agents out there in the world today. So just to summarize some key takeaway for our listeners, agents, they're here, they're making automation smarter and more capable. You don't have to be an AI wizard to start using them. Find a good use case, start small, keep governance in mind, involve the right team, build the trust with the technology. And as Tony said, it's like onboarding a really, really smart new team member. With the right guidance, they can become a superstar on your specific team. So with that, Tony, just before we say goodbye, is there any last parting thoughts or comments you'd like to leave the listeners with?
I think really is just have a good think about some of the work that you're doing today and where you would actually like to offload it to an assistant. And then you call Shaun and say, Shaun, can you help me create this idea as a reality as an AI agent? And let's make things happen. Let's not talk about it. Let's get our hands dirty and start playing with AI agents.
Yeah, I always say it's no longer about if you're going to get started on this stuff. It really is about when. And there's lots of people out there in the world today seeing how they can use this groundbreaking technology to complement their existing automation programs and really deliver beyond expectation. All right, Tony, I think we're going to leave it there. So thank you once again for joining us on the ADAverse.
No, thank you, Shaun. It's been an absolute pleasure. And next time, hopefully we meet face to face.
Absolutely. I look forward to that. And no doubt I'll come across you at a user group or a customer session sometime soon. So thank you once again. Thank you to the listeners for tuning into the ADAverse podcast. If you did like this episode, don't forget to subscribe. Maybe even leave us a review. We've got many more great topics and guests coming up. But until next time, stay curious, keep innovating, and we'll see you in the ADAverse.
Be part of the community by visiting adaverse.com.au. See you in the ADAverse.